You know what? Maybe we should just rename this show Dr. Copy. It's the Wilk Report. I'm Michael Wilk, coming to you from Cleveland, Ohio. And as I said in the intro, they really do need to start renaming this series to Dr. Copy because they just keep ripping off so many elements from the Davies and Moffat era. Last week with Orphan 55, we had Voyage of the Damned ripped off. This week we've got The Runaway Bride ripped off, and that is unfortunate because otherwise it's a pretty decent enough episode, but it's hindered by its own lack of originality. So let me go ahead and get to the slideshow while I do this story synopsis. So, Nikola Tesla is trying to sell his Whittaker Tower and get funding for that. People are balking. He comes across this floating green ball called the Orb of Thassa, which is created by this alien species to basically tell people about, their accomplishments. Nikola Tesla and his assistant, Dorothy Skerritt, are chased by this cloaked figure. The doctor intervenes and rescues them because she detected this strange energy spike in 1901. So she rescues Tesla and Skerritt, taking them to the Orient Express, but the cloaked figure finds them and shows up and starts shooting at them with what turns out to be a Silurian gun. Are we dealing with Silurians? No, we're not. So Tesla goes ahead and tells the doctor about this orb, and she explains what it is. But apparently it's been repurposed because instead of broadcasting, it's now receiving signals. So then we have Thomas Edison appearing, and this episode is kind of clubbing you over the head with the message, but kind of differently from what we had last week. The hooded figure shows up, kills everyone in Edison's lab before showing up to try and get a hold of Tesla. The doctor has gone ahead to confront Edison, and I think she's got Tesla. Tesla is somewhere else, but the doctor traps one of the creatures in a ring of fire. And I had Johnny Cash's song playing through my head when this played out. But, then they kidnap Skerritt and basically use her to get to Nikola Tesla, and they teleport him away to an alien ship. Yaz hitches a ride. So they find themselves aboard this dark alien environment, and it's kind of reminiscent of things we've seen before. Lo and behold, who should show up but the Queen of the Rachnos? Actually, no, not the Queen of the Rachnos, a ripoff of the Queen of the Rachnos. This time it's the Skifra, and apparently the only difference between the Rachnos and the Skifra is that the Rachnos are spider-based creatures, the Skifra are scorpion-based. And because it didn't have the budget to do this whole huge spider-like or scorpion-like body, the Skifra Queen is basically just humanoid size, but she does have her own cool bits, which I'll get to later, but she wants to force Tesla to repair the ship because it's broken down. And it turns out the Skifra are scavengers. They don't build anything. They're not innovative. They steal other people's technology and appropriate it for their own use. Mostly weapons and stuff to conquer. Something breaks down, they demand someone who's capable to fix it for them, and that happens to be Nikola Tesla, not Thomas Edison. So the doctor gets the idea to use his Wardenclyffe Tower as a weapon to take out the Skifra Queen, and they manage to succeed, although there are a few bumps and glitches in the road. But the episode ends, the Skifra Queen is forced back onto her ship along with the rest of her people, and the Wardenclyffe Tower zaps the ship and they flee, and that's the end of the episode. But then of course we get the closing bits where even Edison and Tesla kind of reach a sort of understanding. But so my overall thoughts on the episode: it's okay. It's not great, it's not bad, it's just okay, which we got that very same vibe from series 11, where it's like they're trying to be just good enough to coast by, but not really, they're not really hitting the mark. It's disappointing because in series 11 we were not promised anything and therefore not given anything, which is why that series ended up being so forgettable. But here, first of the year, New Year's Day, we started off with Spyfall Part 1, followed up by Spyfall Part 2, which set something up, the Return of the Magic Mystery Box, which I hate. Chibnall seemed to be starting off big, and like I've said before, when you start off big, you have to end even bigger. But we've gotten two really kind of okay sort of mediocre filler episodes right after that, and both of them have ripped off elements from the Davies and Moffat era. So Orphan 55 ripped off of Voyage of the Damned, where you had the monsters and, people sacrificing themselves to save everybody else. Here we've got a ripoff of The Runaway Bride, which featured the Ragnos, and it's actually a knockoff or offshoot species whom the Doctor doesn't even seem to recognize, which is odd because, Tennant knew about the Ragnos. They were one of the oldest species in the universe, so dangerous that the Time Lords fought a war against them, thought they eradicated them, but some took refuge in the Earth as it was forming, and so we got the events of Runaway Bride. But you would think that the Doctor would recognize something. And, again, the whole concept of making a knockoff of another species, even Davies did that actually, but, he was ripping off his own work, not ripping off somebody else's. So in Voyage of the Damned, you had what was called a Zachi, which is like little red and had these little spiky protrusions coming out of his head, and he had an unpronounceable name. And then, of course, in the End of Time, parts 1 and 2, we got the Vinvachi, who were taller, green, but otherwise the same as a Zachi. And here we've got the Skifra, and, Chibnall really needs to work on his names for alien species under his tenure, because they are so, they don't roll off the tongue very well, and as a result, they become very forgettable because you're not making it easy for people to remember them or repeat their names in a way that people just want to call it up. This overall problem of ripping off from Davies and Moffat, you're pretty much establishing that you haven't got an original bone in your body when it comes to Doctor Who. That's not good. It's like Chibnall went from one extreme of not promising anything and therefore not having to deliver anything to now promising something really huge, but he's falling short of the mark, and he can't even be able to come up with something new and original. This episode, comes across as something like meta, where he's acknowledging that, yeah, we're not really doing anything new here. We're just, reshredding stuff you've seen before. And perhaps maybe taking a shot at, Jar Jar Abrams or Alex Klutzman, but that could just be me engaging in wishful thinking. But the overall feeling that I got from this episode was that it was sort of a meta episode where Chibnall, through episode writer Nina Metaver and director Nina Manzoor, hopes you're too stupid to notice. Now, having said all this, there was a lot to like about this episode. The actors they had playing Nikola Tesla and his assistant Dorothy Scarrett, and also the actor playing Thomas Edison, they were all very good in their roles. The critique I have for Edison is that they tried to redeem him a little bit too much, because Thomas Edison, as you may or may not be aware, he was a lot more ruthless than is portrayed in this episode. He's not above committing murder in order to steal people's inventions. In fact, it's actually, I believe it's one of the early motion picture cameras that he actually arranges for the inventor to be tossed off his train and disappeared, and then he waited like maybe another year or two and then got the patent on it. So I'm kind of disturbed that Doctor Who tries to kind of like gloss over some of his worst atrocities. Nevertheless, the performances were pretty strong. But this whole episode, in fact actually all of series 12 so far, has been derivative.
So derivative, in fact, that in Europe it's considered plagiarized.
We deserve better from this. The episode could have been a lot stronger, but you've got so much repetition from stuff that have been done before, not necessarily better, but before, by Russell Davies and Stephen Moffat. Chibnall doesn't have his own voice in this series. I mean, he tried to have his own voice in series 11, but he played it safe and tried not to rock any boats and took no risks. Here, he's basically just rehashing stuff. I hope it gets better, but I've got a sinking feeling in my gut that this is the best we're going to get. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. I want to hear from you. If you like what you've heard and you want to hear more, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon and select all to receive notifications whenever we upload new content. Like this video, share it. If you want to help support the channel, keep the lights on, and help us bring you more content, head over to our Patreon or Subscribe Star page. We can't do this without you. Until next time, this is Michael Wilk for The Wilk Report saying take care, good night, I'm out.